Eric, do we have bells? Did anyone ring any bells out there? Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Come on in. Take your seats. That's a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed table. Very good. I hope you all enjoyed the 50th anniversary gala last night. A fraction of as much as I did. That was really a treasured experience I'll remember for the rest of my career, and just absolutely loved it. Thank you all for being part of it. We're ready for another great session here on day 2. And we're going to kick it right off and continue the momentum from yesterday with another full program that dives into the pressing issues of our industry right now in this moment and then set us up for the future. And first, it is my distinct honor to welcome Deputy FAA Administrator Rocheleau to the stage. Critical role during a time of significant challenges and opportunities for our aviation system. His leadership has been very, very instrumental in guiding the FAA through the aftermath of the tragic DCA accident, which is so close on all of our minds. Under his direction, the FAA took immediate and decisive actions to restrict helicopter operations around Washington National and eliminated the mixed helicopter and fixed-wing traffic, aligning with safety recommendations from the National Transportation Safety Board. So thank you for your leadership there, Chris. Beyond immediate safety measures, Chris has been at the forefront of implementing the initiatives from the 2024 FAA Reauthorization Act. This legislation, signed into law in May 2024, sets a course for your activities through 2028, emphasizing modernization, workforce development, and safety enhancements, of course. As we look ahead, the FAA is embarking on a comprehensive overhaul of the air traffic control system with a $12.5 billion down payment to get you started. And this effort, as we talked about exhaustively yesterday, aims to replace outdated infrastructure and improve system resilience and ensure the continued safety and efficiency of our airspace. So, Chris, thank you for your steadfast leadership when we needed you in a crisis, and thank you for joining us today. Please join me in welcoming Chris Rocheleau. I'm going to sit right here.
Okay.
Then we get our glasses of water.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for the kind introduction.
Well, we could say all those kind words and many more, because we really needed you to be in that position and to have such steadfast leadership, and it really mattered. And it was not just you, but the full administration behind you. Secretary Duffy and the President really took it seriously, and we appreciate it with all sincerity. So can you walk us through, that really is top of mind for us, in the aftermath of that tragedy. Can you walk us through the response and the decision-making that went into place there with the swift implementation of the corridor restrictions?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Again, good morning, and by the way, congratulations on the 50th. That's very exciting in the event last night. So, and I think I'm recognizing many friends in the audience, and I know you know this, but clearly January started off with what we'll call a normal transition, presidential transition, and I was fortunate after spending a few years with the National Business Aviation Association to return to the agency in this role. And you know, just 9 days into it, we had this horrible tragedy at DCA. And as you mentioned earlier, the Secretary was on it, and the misfortune of having been through some of these moments in the past with the FAA, and we were on it immediately, terminating the mixed traffic around DCA. Working closely with NTSB to support the investigation. Jennifer Hamidi has been a fantastic partner, and while we certainly have our moments together, it really comes down to what do we want to do on the safety front here. We, in addition to immediately terminating the mixed traffic there at DCA, we worked with the military to make sure that we were requiring ADS-B out. Right? So that had been a controversial issue there. We closed down Route 4, so the helicopter route. We put in new routes farther away from the airport itself. We wanted to make sure our people, the controllers, who, oh, by the way, went right back to work after that to make sure that the traffic was coming back there. We wanted to make sure they were supported, that they had the tools they needed, but also the staffing. So we increased staffing there. We made sure we had new leadership coming in to kind of, in a coaching style, make sure that they were being looked out for as they were operating the DCA airspace every day. So, you know, in addition to kind of what we did immediately there at DCA, we also realized fairly quickly, you know, based on, again, unfortunately, kind of that retroactive look, what did we miss? So the NTSB has a track they investigate as they go through, you know, the incident itself. And then we have, internal to the agency, a similar track to where if there was something that we learned immediately, we wouldn't wait for the preliminary report, we wouldn't wait for the annual report, we would be right on it and put measures in place, like I described that we did. But we wanted to make sure that we were looking throughout the national airspace system for what we call hotspots. You probably heard the term before, where do we have this mixed traffic that we could get in there and put in you know, certain measures, whether it was on the procedure side of things or the technology side of things. And as we look through the nation in roughly 20 airports, about 10 locations around the nation, we found a few locations, one of them being Las Vegas, where that mixed traffic posed a problem, and we wanted to make sure that we put the ladder of boundaries in there and that we separated that helicopter traffic from the fixed wing to make sure. So there were a number of initiatives we jumped on immediately, and obviously that's a continuing effort. Right? We're always looking for those opportunities to find risk, mitigate that risk, work with industry to do that, and so, you know, again, credit to the Secretary for leaning in on a lot of this. He's been just a fantastic leader, and we at the FAA were very fortunate to kind of have them there. While we had some excellent team members there, having that leadership really helped in the time immediately after.
And you said something that jumped out to me. You said during an ordinary presidential transition. But is there really any such thing as an ordinary presidential transition?
You know, it's funny, Kate. One of the reasons why I felt compelled, or I was very interested in going back to the FAA after spending a wonderful time with MBA, was I had been the transition executive between President Obama, President Trump, and President Biden. So when asked to come back to serve, I was all in. I know how these things can go, but obviously the tragedy with DCA, the subsequent crash with Bering Air in Alaska, the NOTAM outage, let's just say things got interesting quick.
Things escalated quickly, yes. Well, we were grateful for your leadership. And we always say don't work in isolation, and you didn't. You know, it was good to be able to collaborate and talk with you as you made those adjustments and making sure the industry well understood them and that you understood how we were experiencing them. So thank you for that. So we now have the $12.5 billion down payment. Down payment. And we know it's a down payment. So let's just start with some of the immediate steps that you can take to improve system resilience.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to kind of the Secretary and now Brian Bedford, who, oh, by the way, would love to be here. And this is definitely his crew. And he shared that with me coming in yesterday. He's like, hey, you know, I really tell them hello for me. I need to be there. But as it relates to the brand new air traffic control system, back in May, you may remember, the Secretary brought together the Modern Skies Coalition, and by the way, thank you for being part of that, to, in fact, build a brand new air traffic control system for this nation. You've heard the stories about floppy disks and some of the other technologies from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that we're using right now to manage our national airspace. And when we have outages, when we recognize kind of the shortcomings there, particularly after a tragedy like DCA, it's incumbent upon us to move forward and look for that opportunity. And the Secretary, again, back to his leadership, making sure that we had the tools we need for this modern system. And not just for today, by the way. We're thinking about things for tomorrow, too, when we talk about drone integration and additional safety measures for regional airlines. EV tolls are coming online here shortly. So all of that to say that the new air traffic system needs to be able to have that resiliency, have that dependability as we look at what we're doing today as operations increase. And I would just share with you that, probably not missed on the people in this room, we are back at 2019 numbers. We averaged 45 to 46,000 flights a day. Back at Labor Day holiday, we had 55,800 operations, kind of a record for us. So operations continue to grow. We want to make sure, first and foremost, they're safe and obviously as efficient as possible too. So the new air traffic system will do that. And we are moving out at light speed. No doubt you've heard about our request for solutions. We're working through that right now. We'll select an integrator. We'll move forward on that to build out kind of, and the components of this, if you will, are certainly changing copper wires to fiber optic cables. We've talked a lot about that. The radios, digital radios for the controllers, the tools they need to do their job well. Radars, we have over 600 radars, data technology that we need, that we're going to now purchase, deploy, and make sure that we have better fidelity around the national airspace system. And then, of course, at some point, we'll end up doing facilities, brand new facilities. Our facilities, some of them they're not where we want our controllers to be. They're not the environment we want them to work on, and so that's part of this effort as well.
And I really want to applaud you for a couple of things in that RFS, the request for services. First is the immediate focus on the things that I think are most critical, communications and surveillance. And second, what I think has the potential, we talked about this yesterday, to really vastly improve the efficiency of the system is the moving to a common automation platform. I know that's very ambitious and complex, but I think it's important. So we applaud you for your focus on that.
Yeah, just briefly on that, if you've seen facilities, and certainly we have videos online where you can see the controllers, the tools that they use, they are functional, they are resilient. We run an incredibly safe system every single day. But, we need something that will evolve. That we need a system that is dependable, that is resilient. And that's the whole purpose behind this new air traffic system.
That's great, because that's what's going to take us from being able to just meet the demand today, and you mentioned all the new entrants coming in, but evolve and make sure that there's room for all of us to have the same access and the same resilient system when all these new entrants come in.
I would mention too, we had a record this year, back in June, 1,000 licensed commercial space launches for this nation. That's huge. When I joined the FAA, and it was a few years ago originally, we had 1 or 2 commercial space launches a year, and now we're doing 3.7 a week. So, and we anticipate that to increase. So when we talk about the expected volume of activity within the airspace going forward, as it relates to commercial, GA, BA, regional airlines, all of that, we've got to accommodate that, and that's why we need this new system.
That's great. And another thing that you had in the RFS are surface awareness initiatives at smaller airports. We appreciated that very much. And I wanted to ask you, in some of those regions with limited technology now, we've made the point again and again that sometimes modernization in these smaller airports means just doing the basics. They don't have radar, or they don't have ADS-BN or other radio in the tower. Are there plans or things that we can do incrementally? I understand that we only have the down payment right now, but these are really critical. So what can the FAA do to help support better situational awareness at those small airports?
So two tracks on that. First, there's what we have been doing, and right now we're at 32 or 34 airports right now where we've implemented the Surface Awareness Initiative, which is critical. It's tools, it's training, it's making sure people understand the operating environment for those locations. So we're at 32 or 34 right now. We'll get to 50 by the end of this year. Next year we'll do another 100 small, medium airports, and then the year after that we'll do another 50. So 200 overall that we're looking at doing, and we're doing that as part of kind of what we'll call our normal course of work. This new air traffic control system will enable us to take some of those funds to accelerate some of that work. Because at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is safety as operations increase. And that's critical. So the new air traffic system will accommodate not only additional aircraft operations, but also enhance the safety as we kind of move along that way. So back to kind of the service awareness initiative, we're putting the additional ground-based radar in 44 locations as well. So the FAA had started to move down this path. We are obviously accelerating that at this point, and like I said, within 2 years, next year, we'll have over 150 at small and medium airports for this service awareness initiative.
Well, I'll make a commitment to you, and that's that we'll keep talking to you about what we're experiencing in those smaller airports, and really appreciate your openness to sitting down with us and talking about it a little bit more, because there may be some things that we can do creatively right now with procedures or just governing mixed traffic or something that helps to mitigate that risk, but we really appreciate your openness to it.
Definitely, and I would highlight last night at the reception, I had the opportunity to talk to a couple of the leaders in the room to talk a little bit about that. And that engagement, that constant kind of feedback to us, I mean, we have the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee. We have what is now UAST and used to be CAST, right, the Commercial Aviation Safety Team. Those are initiatives where you can bring information to us, where as we're doing kind of using AI and ML to review risk in the system today, if a company or an operator has specific information they want to share, please, that's what we're there for, right? Constantly trying to look for risk in the system and mitigate that risk, particularly in a kind of a national approach to things.
Well, you can count on it. We'll continue to engage with you on that, and thank you for welcoming that. I'm going to go to staffing now, because obviously there's been a tremendous focus on controller staffing, and you've had some initiatives that you've done already. So can you walk us through some of your initiatives that are in place today, some of the strategies for the near term, and maybe tell us a little bit about any of the early results?
Yeah, thanks for that. As you no doubt heard earlier this year, we kicked off the Secretary-led the Supercharge Initiative, where we needed to hire. There is debate about, is it 3,010, is it 2,800? There's debate about the need for additional air traffic controllers in the system. I've not tried to get too deep into that debate. At the end of the day, we need controllers, and we need to get them through the pipeline as soon as possible. Trained professionally, the best and the brightest, as we like to talk about. And so, as a result of the Secretary's Supercharge Initiative, we took roughly a 13-month process and took 5.5 months off that process by, instead of doing things in a linear fashion, doing them simultaneously to make sure that whether it was medical certifications or security checks, we were doing all of that to expedite the process itself. This summer we had at the Academy over 600, the most we've ever had, so historic numbers going through the Academy of Controller Training. Part of it was to get people into the pipeline. So we just, I know Hannah's here, and we just, we're about to announce we achieved our goal of 2,000 controller hires this year. And we're going for 2,200 next year. And so that is part of all the work we're doing as we put people through this new system. And what we've done through this Supercharge effort is taken the people that are scoring the highest to make sure there's no seat left open as we put people through the academy. And while that gets more people through the academy, it's also getting those people through the academy more successfully. So our average graduation rate is probably around the 63 to 65% range. We're going for 75 to 80%, trying to get people through. And then once they get through that, going out to the field and obviously starting their OJT. And I'll just touch a little bit more on that controller hiring initiative. So this week we announced our 9th ECTI school, so Enhanced Collegiate Training Initiative, where we're getting people through a college curriculum. We're working with those colleges, certifying their curriculum, making sure that as they graduate these students at their universities, they're able to go directly to a facility. So instead of going back through Oklahoma City and spending months there, depending on their course, we're able to get them through and then out to the facilities even quicker. So that's the whole purpose here, is to get more controllers out to the field facilities as quickly as possible and get them trained up.
Well, thank you for that, and it's good. That's obviously such an important issue. And we were talking a little bit at a listening session on Capitol Hill last week about, how we can help the FAA recruit. And one thing we don't want to do is become a victim of our own success and talking about how bad the system is. So at some point, this is less a question for you, but a comment for all of us is the way we talk about this. As you get this new technology and you bring this new equipment on, that's exciting. And as you know, this room knows a little bit about addressing workforce shortages. So, you want to make sure that it's seen as an exciting place to be. And at some point, the momentum behind that will become its own recruiting strategy as well.
I was just touched as you were describing that. There is excitement. It is an exciting job, and it's probably the best, if not one of the best, careers you can have coming right out of high school and going straight into a facility. And I'll point you to the Secretary Duffy. He's a very passionate man, and he's a great leader to work for. And he's got a couple videos out there that kind of are pumping people up to come to the career. But I would also say, you mentioned kind of the industry writ large. We're talking about pilots. We're talking about maintainers, right? All of these go into kind of our ecosystem to make sure. Right now, we're particularly focused on the controller hiring, but I would tell you, and I've heard from a few people that, are you really still hiring? We're hiring safety professionals every single day, aerospace engineers, flight standards people, every day into the FAA. And while the controllers are certainly kind of the more, our more louder approach at this point, if you will, we're constantly hiring in the FAA, and I think that you will see the results. Clearly, we just did through the 2,000 plus for this year for controllers, and we'll see more of that next year.
Well, great. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you one more question about modernization, really, and it's just, we've been talking about next gen for decades now. In fact, that word is verboten on the Hill. We don't even say that word anymore, as you know very well. But there's a lot of talk about accountability. There's a lot of talk about spending this $12.5 billion the right way. But how can airlines and the FAA collaborate so that reform is real this time?
So, I don't think we go into an autopsy of how we got here, right? We recognize there's technologies out there that we're using today that we weren't using 10 years ago that are helping the system safer, more efficient. At the same time, this new air traffic control system really does offer us an opportunity to kind of change that game, to accelerate, to make sure that we're more resilient, not having the outages and the delays that we suffer kind of in the system every day. I think of the initiative itself as being very important, but also the engagement with, and I think this is where you're going, the engagement with industry. We've had a number of different committees over the years that are very important to us, and I would say this administration has been transparent from day one. I have taken more meetings as the acting administrator than I remember in any previous role I've had in a year's time, and we're going to continue to do that. Whether it's on safety, whether it's on the new air traffic control system, whether it's on operational constraints that we need to know about that we may not be getting. So obviously we use the associations largely to get that messaging, but we've met with plenty of individual operators, individual companies who offer a new solution to make the system safer and more efficient, and we'll continue to do that. There is, I think it's today, we've come out with kind of a solicitation to please come back and join some of these committees, and I would invite people that are interested in that to come back to us, to make sure that we're, as we advance the national airspace and the brand new air traffic control system, that we have the input that we need. And it may not be exclusive to just the air traffic control system. It may be on a safety initiative or something, but I would encourage everyone to kind of come back and be part of that conversation.
You can count on that. Thank you. And I want to say to your point about the FAA and the steps that it's taking, one of the things that you're obviously working within a great team, and as you referenced, we do know Administrator Bedford very well, and he's always been a very safety-minded individual, and he's always been somebody who really emphasized trust, and we heard him say during his confirmation hearings that the job number one at the FAA is to win back the trust, and I think the way the two of you are working together is not just at winning back the trust of Congress and the traveling public, but also within the FAA. And I commend you both for that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, Brian's been very clear. I think we've certainly, January was a wake-up call. Complacency in our system is really the enemy of safety, and we need to be vigilant constantly to look for those opportunities. Ryan has come in, we're actually, when I leave here, we're going to an offsite with the leadership team. We're going to reinforce the messaging around safety management systems and how we can work better across the lines of business in the FAA, how we can use data and new tools like AI and ML to help us become more smart. Ideally, at some point, we become predictive in that risk and in the mitigation steps that right now we want to be very confident in our proactive addressing of those risks. So safety management systems will continue to be, we'll continue to evolve those in the agency. We'll continue to work with industry to make sure that we've got the best tools, that we're understanding what's going on, and we incorporate that in our daily operations.
So in addition to air traffic control modernization, you have this other day job, right, which is implementing all of the initiatives in the 2024 FAA reauthorization. So can you talk us through that? I mean, there are hundreds of pages of them, but maybe can you talk us through some of the ones that you think will be the most impactful for regional aviation, and where you see those, how you see those playing out, and what we can do to support you?
That's great. As someone who was with an association before and helped kind of load up some of the 2024 reauthorization, I'm certainly able to kind of, exactly. But that bill is fantastic to give the FAA direction on what needs to be done in many different parts of again, I'll call it our ecosystem. I think that, when I break down the focus areas within the bill itself, we talk about the technology. There are a number of sections, probably 6 or 7 that I can think of, that are specific to modernizing the air traffic system. So our work with the brand new air traffic control system will help inform a number of those sections. We'll be able to draft the safety awareness initiative, the technologies that we're putting out there. ASDX is one of those, but there are a number of other systems that the technology advances so quickly. Why would we spend millions of dollars on one system when we can spend millions of dollars on multiple airports to enhance safety? So the new air traffic control and modernizing the air traffic control, making things safer and more efficient, that's one of kind of the segments of reauth that we're particularly focused on as we work this new initiative. The second piece is on workforce, and I talked about that briefly. Making sure that we have the controllers in the pipeline, that we're getting them out to the facilities, that they're successful in that OJT, so they can handle the increased operations in a safe and efficient manner. So it is not specific when we talk about reauth just to controllers. There are a number of other sections in there that talk about our safety inspection workforce, our aerospace engineers, believe it or not, some of our contracting officers as well. I mean, these are critical functions within the FAA to make sure that we're able to kind of deliver the services that we're responsible for. I think that, NOTAM system, right? We've accelerated the NOTAM system. That's a big deal. That. Well, that is not easy. I mean, I don't remember exactly how early we're pulling that in, but we'll go operational next month on a capability. And as we look at the coming months, we'll end up seeing that more proliferated throughout the system even more. So we're very happy, but that's a perfect example where reauth says do something, we're doing that thing. And the other thing I think is worth mentioning as it relates to kind of reauth overall is AIP, so infrastructure. The monies that we're at $4 billion for infrastructure, and we're working with airports and stakeholders to make sure that that money is getting out, to whether it's for lengthening a runway or additional terminal space and the other types of enhancements that the system will need as the system grows. So again, I'll focus on the technology piece, safety, resiliency as it relates to the reauth. We talk about personnel and hiring and making sure that we're training people, that we're getting people in the system, that we're exciting people, as you talked about earlier, to come to our industry because it is such an exciting place to work. And then, of course, infrastructure, making sure that we're investing in the infrastructure as the system grows, whether that's kind of on the safety side or bringing new entrants into the airspace.
That's great to hear. And something you said earlier is just really the mantra, and we know it to be true, which is complacency is the enemy of safety. And we've been talking a lot with you as this community about pilot training, and our environment is changing. And so our training standards have to evolve as well. And I know that the FAA has been working on initiatives, and you've had your prior air carrier training, rulemaking committee advice, and now you have the enhanced qualification program that was part of 2024's FAA reauthorization. Can you speak to that and where, I know that you're working on something, but what can you share about where the agency expects to land on some of those issues?
That's probably one of those areas in the re-op that we're not as advanced or far as we'd like to be, admittedly. There are a number of requirements that go into that, and obviously when you think about enhanced qualification training for pilots, there's a lot more investment in time and talent as to how we roll that out. I would say that we are working on it. We expect to have an advisory circular out by the end of the year on that issue. But it's one of those things where we're constantly working to kind of get it across the finish line. And I think for good reason, because we want to be very deliberate, very intentional about what that looks like as it comes out. We're kind of going slow to be able to have a finished product at the end. So again, I would forecast an advisory circular by the end of the year.
Okay, well, we'll be looking for that eagerly. I'm glad to hear it by the end of the year, so that's not too far away. We're in September, so that's an ambitious deadline. Well, again, we'll look forward to seeing that, and we'll continue to have these conversations with you because we think that continues to be a really critical piece. You alluded to this earlier, and the other thing that we think is just the most important element of how we identify and address and mitigate risk in our system, our safety management systems. They've been so effective in the commercial airline industry. And our carriers, the FAA in 2009 issued a call to action on SMS, and our carriers embraced it. And I'll tell you, every person in this room will tell you we're better for it. How do you see the FAA approaching safety management systems, and what are your thoughts about bringing them into the agency itself?
Yeah, so a couple of things on that, because when you think about the FAA as a regulatory body, it's required to have a safety management system by ICAO standard, right? You have to have something in place. Certainly air traffic, the ANSP has a safety management system. What I think we've started, and I think Brian will kind of be the leader that will see this through and cross the finish line, is how do we take a safety management system that I think of what operators are using, right, your carriers are using, how do we implement that in the agency itself through, I'll call it cultural change, technology changes, right, process. You need, a former administrator used to talk about the structure, the process, and the discipline to execute on the process. And I think that is particularly important when we talk about a change in approach to a safety management system and culture. We have plenty of voluntary disclosure programs that offer the anonymity that's required, and we take action on those. And so that's a regular, ongoing thing that I think has helped the agency over the years. I think what's important, though, and this goes back to that cultural piece, is how do we do this in such a routine fashion that it is commonplace, that we don't think about, we need a quarterly meeting to do this or that. So using the technology that's available to us, bringing in people to lead through kind of this thought leadership is what we'll call it. I think it's going to be very important. And again, I think this afternoon we'll hear from the administrator how he wants our leadership team to approach this. But I do believe that, months from now, we're going to have a whole new approach with respect to safety management systems in the agency itself.
Yeah, I think the one advice I would give from the commercial airline side really is that having gone through it, it's more effective if your SMS programs are not just coming top down, but bottom up, really. So your frontline workers at every level of the airline or the agency are really empowered to make the right choice for safety every day. And you get that by getting the buy-in from the people on the front lines. I know you're looking at that.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, it's the front line that knows where there are issues, right? The administrator, he's enabling that that disclosure, that activity to happen. But at the end of the day, we need the front line to explain kind of where there are opportunities to enhance safety. And again, I constantly, whenever I'm whenever I have the opportunity to talk about it, it's a cultural thing, right? We have to think about it when we get up in the morning. How can we make things better? So that goes back to kind of our vigilance being our responsibility in this.
I agree with you. And there are other things that we can do. And Administrator Bedford will tell you that in the Lift Academy, I was visiting there, and that's Republic's owned pilot training and maintenance technician training institution. And they have SMS information everywhere. And it's part of the culture from the training environment to the airline environment. And I think that's part of the future too, is the training institutions really bringing SMS in-house so that from the moment safety-facing professionals in the aviation industry start to get their training and education, that part of that culture that you spoke to is instilled early on. And I'm a member of the Aviation Accreditation Board International, ABI, and saw so many of their schools are starting to embrace SMS as well. And I think that's going to be really helpful.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, last question is, what do you need from us? How can we collaborate? You referenced the rulemaking committees, the Aviation Rulemaking Advisory Committee, some of the others. Those are critical. Sometimes, and you get this as your background is in the other smaller side of capacity. Sometimes we have to fight for our seat at the table at the RAA. And I'm not talking about the FAA, I'm talking about the decisions writ large. So, how can we make sure we stay represented and stay engaged, and that our professionals and not just at the RAA, but you've got a lot of safety professionals here, not just our board, but our safety council. How can we stay engaged with the FAA?
So, and I appreciate the question because I think this is really important, and I don't know that it gets addressed as much or is publicly kind of welcomed, and that is, as I mentioned earlier, this administration, the Secretary, now O'Brien, has been very clear. We want to hear from the experts, right? We want to hear from the operators and the technology companies that can help us improve the system itself. And so, having come from 3 years with an association, right, I used to work very closely with the business aviation segment to say, be polite and be persistent and keep knocking on that door until they open it up. So now, again, I'm on the receiving end of that, but I say that when we talk about RA because I think you're so effective at bringing the issues to the table and doing it in a professional manner so that we can work through those together. Some of these things you can't flip a switch and make change overnight, but being persistent and getting to the table and offering solutions, that's something that I've heard the Secretary in a number of meetings we've been in together say, what's your solution? I get the problem, what's your solution? So bringing those solutions to the agency, being part of the rulemaking committees and being part of some of the other engagements we have publicly. And oh, by the way, inviting us to events like this. We try and get out as much as possible, and a credit to our communications shop, to making sure that we're out here talking about the things we need, as opposed to kind of going back to our offices and working on the computers all day.
Well, we will accept that invitation. I think what I heard is you say just keep knocking on our door. So with that, well, before we close, let me ask you, is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you want to share with this crowd, or any other way we can support you?
I'll just say I really appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the advocacy that you all bring to the table when we talk about things like safety or modernizing the airspace. I certainly appreciate your involvement in the Honor Skies Coalition. I do think when I see a few people in here with gray hair, and when I think about kind of the alignment that we have right now between the administration, the Secretary of Transportation, the Administrator of the FAA, industry leaders, airports, regional airlines, the eVTOL companies. I mean, there's such an alignment right now. That $12.5 billion down payment will go to making significant change here in the next 3 years. And I'm proud to be a part of that, and I hope we continue to engage in this kind of forum.
Well, Mr. Deputy Administrator, that was an absolutely perfect closing note. You can count on our support and collaboration. And thank you for being such a wonderful guest today. And thank you for your leadership and all you're doing. And please join me in thanking Deputy Administrator Rocheleau.
Next up, we're going to just take a 5-minute break.
Because we've got our lawmakers coming in, and I understand that they are en route. They are always navigating boats and traffic, so we'll just be back here, but don't go too far. We want to be ready to start as soon as we have our distinguished guests with us, so thank you.